Why did you develop autoimmunity? And what's happening with your immune system? And what can we do about it? Okay, let's break this down. I want you to understand what's happening in your immune system so that we know ways that we can change your immune system so that we can calm down this autoimmune attack. Okay, so let's talk about the immune system. We've got your B cells and we've got your T cells. Your B cells come from the bone marrow, and those are making antibodies. So you were exposed to COVID or flu, or you got a vaccine and you made antibodies, and it makes your immune system really educated as to, like, oh, I've seen this before. I can handle this. Great. Those are the B cells. We're going to be talking more about the T cells. Now, the T cells, they're like the surveyors. They're going to be constantly surveying the scene. They're like little security guards. They're always making sure that there's no invaders and that you're safe and that you're not being attacked by viruses or bacteria, but they're also surveying for precancerous cells. So these T cells are really important. They're going to say, what's a threat? When is it safe? When do we stand down? So these T cells, there's three of them I'm going to talk about. So there's the helper T cells. Those guys are like, turn the immune system reaction on. There's something here, okay? And then they bring along the killer T cells. And those guys destroy the infected cells. They destroy the abnormal cells. So this is really important with any kind of infection or cancers. These really important killer T cells come along. Now, the part that I'm going to talk more about is the regulatory T cells, or the Tregs. Those are the cells that actually apply the brakes or calm the immune system down, because we don't want just all attack, because then what if your immune system is like, I don't know if this is self or non-self, okay? So we don't want an overactive immune system, and we don't want an underactive immune system. We want something that's just right. So what T cells do is they're kind of like the immune peacemakers. So they make sure things are regulating, and they make sure that everything is attacking properly, but not too much. Now, there's a gene that was found, that we've known about this gene. It's called the FOXP3 gene. It's on the X chromosome. So X chromosome, women have two X's, men have one X. So this FOXP3 regulates proper T regulatory function. So the Tregs there's T cells that come in, and the FOXP3 gene turns those into T regulatory cells. So now we have more Tregs. Now, Tregs are great because they can say, go fast, go slow, go fast, go slow. They can say, this is self tissue, let's not attack this. This is non-self tissue, let's attack this. So, but what if you're a woman and you have two X genes, right? X chromosomes. And so you have two FOXP3 genes in them. And let's say those FOXP3 genes aren't doing a very good job. You will have a higher incidence of having autoimmunity, okay? Because the regulatory T cells, if they're low, they're just going to let your immune system attack anything. Now, if they're running really high, then you have a lot of regulation, and you have a lot of normalcy, and you have a lot of control, okay? Because they're kind of the peacemakers of your immune system, all right? So what we want to think about is what really crushes your Treg cells? Like, what makes them go down besides the gene that's on your X chromosomes? And by the way, this is why women have a higher incidence of having autoimmunity, because when they have two of these FOXP3 genes, they have a higher incidence of having this sort of genetic ability to not really regulate. And this is why a lot of females pass this autoimmunity down in the female side. So, and then when women have these hormone shifts and they get more inflammation when their hormones crash down into menopause, and it really disrupts the system of the FOXP3 genes really turning on those Treg cells. So women rely heavily on this precise immune regulation by this FOXP3 gene. So we want to think about, what are the things that we have control of every day that are driving you into low Treg function, which is not good for you? So we're going to think about, number one, chronic inflammation. Why would you have chronic inflammation? I don't know. Do you get exposed to chemicals? Do you drink water that has heavy metals in them? Do you have a pollution environment, like a high pollution environment if you're living in a city that's highly polluted? Are you in traffic all the time with a lot of pollution? What about you're really overweight, you have a lot of belly fat, that increases a lot of inflammation all on its own. What about you having type 2 diabetes or had type 1 diabetes and your blood sugar is a little high and your insulin gets a little high, and that can drive inflammation. So there's lots of sources of inflammation, but inflammation derails the T reg cells. They're like, I'm managing something that's chaos that might be inflammation, and they're not doing their job of regulating your immune system. They're doing the job of trying to manage your inflammation. Okay. So getting to the bottom of why you have inflammation is a key. Now, also, gut barrier damage. So let's say that you eat junk food, a lot of highly processed food, and your gut lining is a little bit inflamed, or you have reflux all the time, and you have overgrowth of bad bacteria in your gut, and your gut lining is just not happy. Say you have a chronic H. pylori infection in your gut, or you have overgrowth of bad bacteria in your gut. Those are going to cause the gut to just be like not completely sealed, but maybe a little swollen and open, which causes a little bit of leaky gut. That gut barrier damage can mess up and suppress the Treg function. Now, also vitamin D deficiency. I'd say about 95% of my patients that I run in their blood work are D deficient if I'm looking at them on blood work. So the only ones that aren't are taking vitamin D on a regular basis. Remember, vitamin D is a hormone and it really regulates and stimulates these Treg cells. Okay, so being on vitamin D is really important. Chronic stress. So chronic stress can increase your cortisol and it can increase your blood sugar. It increases your ability to have broken barriers of sorts when you have cortisol all the time. So your gut barrier can get a little leaky, your blood-brain barrier can get a little leaky. We have barriers that aren't completely sealed that can be driven worse by chronic stress. We talked a little bit about environmental toxins, water not being clean, air not being clean, pesticides in foods, things like that. Those are chronic stresses to our bodies. So being around spraying places, like if you live next to a farm or you live next to a pollution creating factory. I mean, these are really important things to think about, like what kind of exposures you're getting on the day to day. Now, other repeated immune triggers can be triggering you as well. What if you have issues with gluten and dairy or food triggers that can drive the Treg cells down? Okay, so we need to think about things like, how are we going to start managing this? So if we are talking about, say, inflammation first, we could figure out how to balance your blood sugar, right? Figure out how to start losing some weight. Get onto omega-3 fatty acids, some fish oils. We need to get adequate sleep. Be on more anti-inflammatory foods. Gentle, consistent movement, some exercise. That's really helpful. Let's talk about the gut. Like, let's think about, how do we regulate the gut microbiome? Like, let's break that down. Like, that's a whole nother talk, but we're going to just do a little snippet on that. So if you eat vegetables and you eat fruits, and those are plants, and you have herbs, any kind of plants feed your microbiome, and your little microbiome critters make something called butyrate. They make acetate. They make propionate. Those are short-chain fatty acids. It helps to seal that gut back up. It helps take the inflammation down. So when you have high vegetables and plants in your gut, you're going to grow a better microbiome. You're going to make more butyrate. You're going to have less damaged gut. You're going to have less intestinal permeability. You're going to have less inflammation. So these are things to think about. What kind of vegetables and fruits are you eating? Like, are you eating things that are like, berries, even olive oil, herbs? Those are really helpful for decreasing the inflammation in the gut. Let's talk about vitamin D real quick. So vitamin D is a gene signal. So it directly supports that FOXP3 activation, T regulatory cell differentiation. And it's going to be like really activating that immune system to like do the right thing, right? We have all these T cells, and if you don't have enough regulatory T cells, you can't calm your immune system down. It's just going, right? And it's not good for it to be full force. We don't want to activate the immune system. We want to actually modulate it and go, chill out. Like, stop attacking me. Like, you need to attack me. So let's stop putting like dynamite in there and making it go to making it like fire off and attack ourselves. We talked about blood sugar stability. We want to make sure that if your blood sugar is super like steady through the day and is like rolling, it's not inflammatory. But what if your blood sugar spikes and crashes? You're chronically hyperglycemic and hypoglycemic. That actually drives these things called cytokines or inflammation. So that's something that we need to think about. So being really steady, maybe using a continuous glucose monitor so that you can really watch what's happening with my blood sugar. Is this a problem? Because it's a problem with most of my patients. And these are just regular people that don't think they have a problem. It was a problem with me. So I didn't really realize I was having blood sugar swings. So important to find out what's going on. Now, food triggers, especially gluten. Gluten and dairy actually are number one and number two. The top five are gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and eggs. Doesn't mean that you react to all of them, but if you are having autoimmunity, you most likely react to some of them. And gluten and dairy are number one and number two. So those food proteins can create more gut permeability and inflammation, and it activates the inflammatory T cells. There's some T cells that are like Th17 that are inflammatory T cells. So it can drive those. Okay. So if you have a diet that is laden in like processed food or highly processed foods, hydrogenated foods, fast foods, things like that, you're going to be driving those cells that are like more inflammatory T cells. You're certainly not going to be driving up your Treg cells. So by removing triggers, you're reducing that immune noise and you're allowing those Tregs to function better. Okay. Now, bottom line, we need to calm the inflammation. We need to heal the gut. We need to make sure you're taking vitamin D. Now, there's other vitamins that support Treg function. Vitamin A supports it. Vitamin A actually supports this sort of mucousy layer on your sinuses in your nose and your throat and your gut lining. It's called secretory IgA. And vitamin A helps to make that thicker so that you can actually protect yourself from invasion, from bacteria and from viruses. So that's really helpful. Vitamin A has some other T regulatory effects that are really helpful. So vitamin A, vitamin D are both helpful. Folate's helpful. Zinc is helpful. Selenium is helpful. We have all these little micronutrients that can be really helpful too. So we can get deep in the weeds on all sorts of things. So running a really good set of blood work labs, like from Quest or LabCorp, is a really great place to start. So you can just go, what's up with me? Let's check my D and my A and my Bs and my selenium and my zinc. You can check all of those and really see like your micronutrients. Like, how are you doing? Like, are you getting enough nutrients? Are you getting enough, like all the B vitamins and the such to actually stimulate your Treg cells? Super helpful. So these are the things I want to talk about because this has been really popping up when all the Nobel Prize for Science came up with this FOXP3 gene and how it activates Treg cells. That's an amazing discovery, and I'm super stoked that they figured that out. But they're not giving us any information about, but what are you supposed to do about it? Like, so they're thinking about making medications. They're thinking about gene therapy. Great. Also, but what are you putting in your mouth? How much are you sleeping? How much stress do you have? Are you exercising? Do we have enough vitamin D? Do we have enough like gut repair things in our gut? How's our microbiome even feeling? Do you feel like your microbiome is okay? Maybe you do a GI map test. Maybe that's really helpful to look at your microbiome and give you a little clue about how things are going there. So it's all big picture stuff. And it all doesn't seem like it really makes a difference, but it does. So if you have autoimmunity, I want you to think at least about getting on vitamin D, getting off of gluten and dairy. Maybe you get on like an autoimmune paleo diet and you start like reintroducing food triggers and see what's triggering you. We have to get really curious about what your triggers are because this is what's tricky about autoimmunity. It's not a recipe that everybody can follow, right? Because yours might have triggered from like maybe COVID derailed your T cells. Maybe it just got really hard for you to fight that. Maybe you wound up getting triggered because you have chemical exposure. This other person has food exposures and leaky gut. This other person really doesn't have enough vitamin D. And this other person has every woman in their family has lupus. So there's so many things to sort out with autoimmunity, which is why I'm really pushing people to kind of understand what the mechanisms are underneath this and then how you can manage this from your own house and making good decisions about increasing your T regulatory cells. I hope this helps.